Hi, my name is Catherine Roberts. Today I was asked to present on Module 13, and I'll be talking more specifically on mere exposure. This is a theory by Robert Zajonc, and he says that through repeated exposure to a neutral stimulus, an individual comes to evaluate the stimulus more favorably. So basically, just being exposed to something neutral over and over again through the course of time will eventually cause a person to find the neutral stimulus to be something they associate good feelings with. So as the textbook says, all that is necessary is repetition. This theory applies mainly to advertising, but for the sake of personal examples, I'm not going to be really mentioning advertising at all. So now that I've given some background as to what mere exposure is and does, I'll try and make the theory clearer by giving some personal examples. In my life, there have been many examples of mere exposure and how it's influenced my attitude towards something, but in particular, I can remember that the certain instance where there was a new teacher. He was basically a student teacher at the time who started working with the band when I was a freshman in high school. And I didn't have any developed attitudes towards him because, of course, I didn't know him when I first met him. But he started working with the marching band, so us students would see him in the summer, probably 8 hours a day in total. Then, of course, we would see him during school hours and sometimes after school if we had like sectionals or something. Throughout my freshman year, I started to actually really like the teaching style of the student teacher. A lot of students, including myself, would prefer to get help and instruction from him as he worked more closely with us. And he eventually got hired as a permanent assistant band director. And all the students that he had been working with for the past year all developed strong positive attitudes towards him. Now that I've discussed that experience, I'll go on to make some inferences. So number one, the theory of course works with the use of just exposure and repetition. This is why it's called mere exposure. Second, this theory works mostly with shaping ideas with advertising, but can work when it comes to people, songs, etc. Third, we as people naturally just like things that we're familiar with or have become familiar with over time. And number four, lastly, this theory works best with something that is neutral to you, not something that you've already developed feelings towards. Now that I've made these inferences, I will discuss how these can be transferred in other aspects of life. So my first example, in your work life, you can use mere exposure in plenty of ways. One of the ways would be in the instance you're a manager or a team lead supervisor of some type. To promote harmony with your team that you're supervising, you can use this theory by introducing a new idea. It sounds vague, but let me give a more specific example. So you could introduce a weekly recap where your team meets to discuss their week and their future goals for the next week. If this is something that you've never done before as a team, then them being exposed to the new idea and way of doing things will eventually produce a positive attitude. Something else that you can do if you're on the other side of the spectrum and aren't necessarily a lead is to promote consistent work. Show up on time, meet deadlines, and have a positive attitude. All these things will help your exposure and will help coworkers and supervisors view you in a positive light and form good attitudes towards you. A second example of how you could use this in your life would be in your academic life. So getting involved in a new organization on campus and consistently putting work in will help you gain exposure with your peers, giving them time to develop a positive attitude towards you. In conclusion, mere exposure is a theory that states the more times you're exposed to a neutral stimulus, the more you form good attitudes. And just a recap of the main points, this theory works with just repetition. It works mostly with shaping ideas with advertising. We as humans naturally just like things we're familiar with. And lastly, this theory works best for something that's neutral, so something that you haven't developed strong attitudes towards yet. Although in the textbook it talks about mere exposure applying mainly to advertisement, it can also be used in your personal, academic, and even work life. Whether it's meeting a new person, being the new person that someone's meeting, or getting your team at work to act more harmonious, mere exposure can benefit the way that people see and perceive you over time and can be a great benefit to you in all aspects of your life. Thank you.